Welcome. You made it. I don't know how you got here, if you know how you got here, but you're here.
Happy Easter. My name is Pastor Bex.
And I'm Pastor Josh. We want to welcome you to Fox Island Alliance Church. Today could be your first day here or at any Easter service. And if that's true, we want to extend a special welcome. You're in good company. We're going to dive in here in just a sec. Anything we need to know?
We want to tell you a couple ways you can engage with us as you are watching. There is going to be a chat bar, and you can just use that to
introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Ask a question. We'll have hosts in there respond if that is something you want to do later on. There's a connection card letting us know you were here. We'd love to know you were here if we can follow up in any particular ways.
Absolutely. We so believe in the message and the goodness of Easter. It has changed our lives, and so we're excited to dig in. Before we get started, I'd like to invite you to join me in prayer. We like to sometimes close our eyes and still our bodies so we can just focus on talking to and hearing from the Lord. So let's do that now. Well, Jesus, we thank you so much for the good news, the reality, the truth of Easter. We have built our lives upon this gift of grace. Thank you that you were compelled by your love to sacrifice yourself to save us. We celebrate that. Jesus, I pray a blessing on every individual, on each family, on every home that is tuning in, that is gathered today to contemplate and to celebrate this reality, this good news of who you are and what you're up to and what it means in our lives. Would your spirit, which is living and active, would it pursue us today in a way that cuts through the clutter and the noise, that silences the fear and the worry so that we could hear your voice and respond. Give us faith and humility to respond today to your invitation of grace and love in our lives. We want to hear from you. We believe that you are worthy of our praise, our admiration, and our thanksgiving. So be glorified today, Jesus. We pray these things in your good name. Amen.
Amen. Let's worship together.
Our King, come let us bow at his feet. He has done great things. See what our Savior has done. See how his love overcomes. He has done great things. God, you do great things. Conquer the grave, you free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Jesus, my Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Isn't this the weirdest and wackiest Easter we've ever had? I wish so badly that I could see you in real life and give you the biggest hug and wish you a very happy Easter. But alas, here we are. Even so, on behalf of all of us, we are so honored that you have chosen to gather with us, even though we're scattered all over town, all over the state, all over the region. It's good to be together. We believe that this is a Sunday, this is a morning, this is a reality that is worth pressing pause on everything else that we're worried about, on everything else we could be accomplishing, and instead fixing our eyes on Jesus. God's word is an invitation to us, and in it says, taste and see that the Lord is good. You see, the Lord beckons us to draw near, not to hold back, but to take a step close to him, to see with all of our senses, and including all our circumstances, if he really is who he says he is. Is he really as good and as kind, as faithful and as powerful and as victorious as he promises to be? Well, through the story of Easter, we see that that is absolutely true. God sent his own son, this perfect, spotless lamb, to accomplish for us what we could not accomplish for ourselves. So Jesus came and lived among us, compelled by his love, and then sacrificed himself instead of saving himself so that we could be saved, so that we could be forgiven, set on a new path with a new future, a new identity, security, and purpose. Doesn't that sound like the kind of gift that you'd like to accept? Yes, this story is about God and his son Jesus and what he did on the cross, in the tomb, and then resurrected again. But this story is for you. Yeah, you. Yeah, even you. Kids, it's for you. It's for you in homes where you're just not sure how you're gonna make ends meet. It's for those of you in marriages that are very strained by living and working in such close quarters. It is for you if you have never considered yourself to be a real Easter person. And it's even for you in a fresh way if Easter is just like your favorite thing ever. So we want you to draw near this morning, to taste and see the goodness of the Lord, and to consider, to contemplate his gift, and to celebrate the resurrected Jesus, the person, the power, the provision, the peace that is all made possible because of the reigning, resurrected, ruling Jesus. Now, I'm pretty pumped because I'm a very enthusiastic person, but before we begin to sing again, I just want to pause right here and invite you to pause as well. Yes, you may be in those same pajamas from 3 days ago. It's totally fine. You may have a delicious ham in the oven. You might have a crying baby. You might have some emails that you need to get back to. But what if we just paused right here together and considered, what does Easter mean for us today? We believe it still matters today. It matters for you. Now listen, there are some among us today, this afternoon or this morning, who will be tempted to discount this story in their lives because they feel they're too far gone, that they have not amassed the track record that would make them worthy to receive such an enormous gift. Some among us will think, I don't know if I'm really understanding the fullness of this story. Like, exactly what is the Passover and the Last Supper and who is Judas? Yes, there are important historical and social contexts that help us understand what was going on in Jesus' day. But listen, this story actually is for you. No matter where you're coming from, no matter what your track record, no matter if your life is a hot mess, it's for you. And so please stay with us, stay with this, because we don't want you to miss the goodness of God revealed in the person of Jesus that's available to you today. And this is a free gift. This is the first yes, maybe, that you're gonna say to the person of Jesus today. So it doesn't matter if you didn't grow up knowing this story, or if you try and fail and try and fail and fail and fail and fail. It doesn't matter if you don't get the whole thing. This story's for you. And we invite you to be a part of this with us. So can you say yes to that? All right. Well, if you're sort of like sitting around, I invite you to stand up and wiggle around, give yourself some space, because we are not done singing. And then we're going to listen, and then we're going to respond to the personal and powerful invitation of Jesus into your life and mine today.
For your mercy never fails me. And all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest night. You were close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God.
All my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. My life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down and surrendered now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. There is a name who reigns without contention, whose power can't be questioned or contained. With humble fame, he rules the earth and heavens. His glory knows measure or refrain, and it's bursting past the borderlines of space. Jesus, enthroned upon the praises of our hearts. is a name reaching past the margins, calling sons and daughters back to Him. And as He saves, we can hear the roar of heaven as prodigals come running home again. Oh, the triumph of His name will never end. Jesus, throned upon the praises of our hearts. Jesus, you're the King, you're the center of it all. Jesus, throned upon the praises of our hearts. Jesus, you're the King, you're the center of it For every eye will see, and every heart will know there is no name above the name of Jesus. Death could not hold Him down, no grave could keep Him bound. All sin and sickness bow to the name of Jesus. For every eye will see, and every heart will know there is no name above the name of Jesus. Death could not hold Him down, no grave could keep Him bound. All sin and sickness bow to the name of Jesus. Jesus, throned upon the praises of our hearts. Jesus, you're the King, you're the center of it all. Jesus, throned upon the praises of our hearts. Jesus, you're the King, you're the center of it all. There is a name who reigns without contention, whose power can't be questioned or contained. With humble fame, He rules the earth and heavens. His glory knows no measure or refrain, and it's bursting past the borderlines of space.
Two others, both criminals, were led out to be executed with him. When they came to a place called the Skull, they nailed him to the cross. And the criminals were also crucified, one on his right and one on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." And the soldiers gambled for his clothes by throwing dice. The crowd watched, and the leaders scoffed. "He saved others," they said. "Let him save himself if he is really God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers mocked him too, by offering him a drink of sour wine. They called out to him, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." A sign was fastened above him with these words, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals hanging beside him scoffed, "So you're the Messiah, are you? Prove it by saving yourself, and us too while you're at it." But the other criminal protested, "Don't you fear God even when you have been sentenced to die? We deserve to die for our crimes, but this man hasn't done anything wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus replied, "I assure you, today you will be with me in paradise." There's something about the story you just read that caught my eye. Now, we're going to feature a part of this story that is not exactly the Sunday portion of the story. So today is Easter Sunday. Today is the day we commemorate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The tomb is empty. Not to spoil the ending for you, right? But something happened on the day that Jesus was crucified that I think gives us an important window into who he is and who he came for. And so as I thought and prayed about where we would unpack today, this is where I felt like God was directing my heart. So I hope there's something helpful for you in this. So there's two criminals crucified on both sides of Jesus. And the crowds and the religious leaders and the soldiers and the first criminal are all mocking Jesus. And it's interesting that they mock Jesus in the exact same way. There's like one really insulting, condescending remark that these groups have in common. Do you remember what it was? Save yourself. Save yourself. So here's Jesus, who had come as the Savior of the world, and he had done miracles. He'd raised the dead. He'd cast out evil spirits. He dined with sinners and prostitutes. He brought good news of great joy for all the people, particularly if you were one of the people who were kind of part of the down and out, who were not part of the mainstream power brokers, who didn't grow up on the right side of the tracks, who didn't have it all together. Jesus said at one point, "I didn't come for the righteous, but to call sinners." He said it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. And so Jesus does all these remarkable things. His life and ministry was incomparable. He couldn't even get into a town without the whole town meeting him at the edge of that town. When he went into a house, it would so fill the place that there was not room for anyone to come. And so he's finally betrayed and handed over to the authorities. He's unjustly accused and tried and convicted, and now they've got him up on a cross. And so where's the big powerful guy now? Right? This is proof that he's not who he says he is. If you're so powerful, then save yourself. They thought this insult was like the nail in the coffin, discrediting Jesus and his ministry. My, how some things don't appear as they actually are sometimes. And so it's striking that we've got religious leaders, Jewish religious leaders, Roman soldiers, and a convicted revolutionary thief. It's hard to know exactly what that guy's crime would have been. All seeing the situation the same way. This is the end of the road, pal. If you were impressive, powerful, you'd save yourself. But the jig is up. In the middle of this narrative is this curious other criminal on Jesus' side. Somehow this criminal has the perceptivity, the wherewithal to realize that what is going on does not look like what's really happening. Because he says this curious line, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Why would you turn to someone dying on a cross, breathing their last breaths, and say anything about some date in the future? You're dying, they're dying, we're all dying. This is it. This is the end of the road. But somehow this criminal knows this is not the end. Even though the Roman emperor and the Jewish leaders and the crowds have gotten their way, they've silenced him, they've muzzled him, they've mugged him, they've beaten him, they're crucifying him. He will die when this day is done. But somehow this thief says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus, under the most duress a human could possibly ever experience, under the most stress and pain a human could ever experience, he responds in the most clear-headed, kind, gracious, and compassionate way imaginable. I mean, I've been trying to work at home. I have 5 kids. These days are stressful. These days produce anxiety about the future, economic anxiety, concern for our loved ones, our grandparents, our neighbors, right? Wondering how long this is going to go on. What's this going to look like when everything is said and done? And I have to admit that I'm not proud of some of the reactions that come out of me when I'm under extreme stress. The more difficult the situation, the worse I respond, honestly. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you've snapped at someone or seen something come out of you that you were like, okay, I'm not proud of that. All right, I'm going to have to walk that one back, ask for forgiveness, and make dinner tomorrow night, right? But Jesus, hanging from a tree, unjustly accused, tried, convicted, dying, has a criminal. I mean, this dude's no good. This dude's been no good his whole life long, right? That's what everyone thought. He deserved capital punishment for his crimes. That's a bad guy. And so he's getting the sum total of the consequences of his life's choices. This guy who's lived 99.9% of his life in the wrong direction, at the 11th hour and 59th minute of his life, turns and in his dying breath sees clearly, possibly for the first time. The whole crowd, for the most part, is getting this scene wrong, but he sees it right. And he says, will you remember me when you come into your kingdom? How would you have responded in that moment? How would you guess Jesus would respond? We hear about deathbed confessions, deathbed conversions, sometimes when life flashes before our eyes, when everything we held on to is being taken from us, we recollect and consider our life's choices and where they brought us. And sometimes we make very significant decisions late in the game. And I don't know what your understanding of your need for a Savior is, or how you understand salvation to be, but this picture tells you everything you need to know. There's the Son of God who lived a perfect, sinless life on a cross. Because the fate of our choices, each one of us in our own way, conscious at times and not conscious at other times, have turned to our own way and done what seemed right in our own eyes, and we've rebelled against God's call on our lives. And that's what created this mess. This world is broken This world is fallen and nothing has escaped its grasp. It affects your brain and your body and your heart and my brain and my body and my heart and the entire cosmos. Coronavirus is not God punishing his people. It's something that happens in a fallen world where tsunamis and earthquakes and hurricanes, tornadoes often leave carnage in their path. This isn't karma. This isn't God smiting people. This is the sad reality of a world gone bad. God steps into our pain, kicks down the door, and does not gun us down. Instead, he shows us what God is like. He's full of mercy and compassion. He speaks truth to power. He is bold. He is not intimidated. He treats men and women with equality and dignity. He has compassion on the brokenhearted, on the down and out, on the outcast. But he had a job to do, not just whisper sweet nothings and do amazing things, but to defeat the curse of sin. And that was death. Death, the thing that hangs over your life and my life. This impending reality that we have every reason to be fearful of. Our time here is short and we don't know what's on the other side. And sometimes in those moments where we had felt self-justified at every point up until that point, we now realize, you know what? Our hands are dirty. We've not been who we needed to be. And so this person in this moment has a come to Jesus moment. And he does the most humble, small, simple thing. And I'm so encouraged that Jesus doesn't say, think of what he could have said. He could have said, are you kidding me? You think you can live 99.9% of your life in the wrong direction and at the last minute realize you want a get out of jail free card? You want grace and mercy in your moment of need? Well, tough cookies. You should have thought of that earlier. You should have thought of that before you killed people, before you stole things. That's not what he says. This guy looking at him and accepting the free gift of salvation in his last dying breaths is everything Jesus came for. Jesus is going to breathe again. Jesus is going to live again. But whether or not this guy ever finds life again comes down to what happens in those last final moments. And one of the thieves on the cross next to him just doubles down on the person he's been. Scoffing, mocking, rejecting, rebelling. And this guy who's made a career of that as well has a change of mind. He pivots. Life circumstances change. He finds himself in a tough, vulnerable situation, and he realizes that maybe it's not so crazy to entrust your life into the care of someone else. So coming back to what I said earlier, you didn't make yourself. You didn't conceive yourself. Your life was not designed to be protected by you. Your life was not designed to be preserved by you. We're not very good at self-preservation. That's been my biggest prayer I've prayed in this last month. God, would you preserve life? Would you preserve the life of the frontline workers? Would you preserve the life of our elderly and immunocompromised? Would you preserve the life of all these people going through very difficult situations? Would you preserve the life of women in domestic violence situations at home? Would you preserve the lives of children who are scared in their own home? Would you preserve the life of the things that you want to still have vitality when all of this is said and done? I'm asking God to preserve life because he's the creator and sustainer of life, not us. But there's something that happens to the human agent when we come to and realize that life is precious and vulnerable. Life is precious and vulnerable. We realize that our choices matter. Our choices are powerful, in a reality where we are precious and vulnerable. Precious in the sense that no human being is insignificant, no matter what you've done. We know that deep down in our bones. That's not the result of just cosmic evolution on a grand scale for a billion years. That's not what gives us our significance. Rich or poor, black or white, young or old, near or far, slave or free, every human being matters. Life is precious. You can tell by the lengths we go to preserve ours. But it's also vulnerable. We're one day away from any number of legitimate things taking us out. Now, you and I, for most of us, we live in America. We've had the privilege of growing up in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And those are things we ought not take for granted. But they can make us soft, if you think about it. Growing up in the country of the world's largest military, growing up in a country with a remarkable healthcare system, growing up in one of the most affluent countries in the world can give us the impression that we're not as vulnerable as we really are. Many of us don't worry about our next meal. We don't worry about clean water. We don't worry about our kids dying from diarrhea. We don't have to pick between school and medicine for our children. We don't duck every time we hear a loud noise because there's shelling going on all around us. We've lived in a peacetime country in a relatively safe and affluent part of the world. We can get kind of comfy and cozy there. We don't feel that vulnerable there. Our minds go to what we're going to do on the weekend, what we're going to do in the future, the places we can go, the toys that we can have, the things we can do to ourselves, the experiences we can have with others. Those are all peacetime ventures. But the coronavirus has had this humbling effect on us. And I'm not glad it's happening, but there is a silver lining in a lot of ways to what's going on. I'm sure you've had a couple experiences in the last month of something good coming out of this. Again, we continue to salute and honor our heroic medical workers and first responders, people who are running towards the fire, so to speak, who are putting Jesus' words into action. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down your life for a friend. That's what Jesus did on Good Friday. That's what many people do every day. And so we don't take lightly the fact that this has been catastrophic for many people. And yet, in small ways and in big, there have been some good things that have come of it. And one for many is just taking an account of your life. Realizing that there's like an invisible thing in the world that you could get and not even know you had. And it could knock you out or someone you care about close to you within a week's time. And all your money and all your military might doesn't protect you from it. Having good health care is a start, but lost more people than anywhere. Jobs are insecure. We've got 16 million people who've lost their jobs in the last month. This is insane. But it's a reality that a lot of people live with for more of their life than we have. And it's a helpful reminder that your life is not in your own hands. This moment can serve as an opportunity for us, just like it was for that thief on the cross, where we perhaps see Jesus in a new way, differently than we did even a month ago. Jerusalem is not that big of a city. It's a city of 40 or 50,000 people. That's like the size of Gig Harbor. I've got to believe that this thief knew of Jesus before this day. Maybe not. It's not a big town. I don't know how many people are being executed on a regular basis. But Jesus was known everywhere he went. And I bet this guy had crossed paths with him before. And he'd said, "Thanks, but no thanks, Jesus. I'm good. I'm on the path I want to be on. If it changes, I'll let you know. Well, at this moment, it changed. And Jesus, who always looked at that man with dignity and love, said the most profound and powerful words. This guy's about to breathe his last day, and he doesn't give some IOU, some sweet nothing, some hope-filled word that didn't have any substance with it, just to allow this guy to go nicely off into eternity. No, he says, today, I assure you, you will be with me in paradise. The authority with which Jesus speaks, welcoming this sinner, this scuttbag, according to many people. That's not how Jesus saw him. So, church, I wonder where you're at today. I wonder if you've been trying to do the self-protective, self-preserving method for your life. I want to encourage you to do what Jesus said and to do what Jesus did. Jesus did not come to earth to preserve his own life. He didn't come to be served, he said, but he came to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And on the cross, he proved it. On the cross, he could have served one of two groups. He could have saved himself, or he could have saved the world, but he couldn't do both. So the greatest criticism and mockery that people hurled at Jesus as he was suffocating to death on that cross was, if you're so high and mighty, if you're so wonderful and powerful, if you're so glorious and honorable, save yourself. Meanwhile, anyone who has a clue in some weird, sick, but understandable way is saying, please don't save yourself. Please don't save yourself. Please don't call down angels from heaven to take you off this tree. Please see it through to the end. Please complete the work you came to do. Please take the sting of death and remove it once and for all. Please give hope and mercy and compassion a name and a destiny that we can't get on our own, that we can't get anywhere else. Please, Jesus, don't save yourself. Save us. We're not deserving of being saved. We've not earned this. We haven't merited it. While everyone else is saying, save yourself, we're saying, no, 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 no. Thank you. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for taking my place and doing what I didn't want to do so that you could do for me what I could never do for myself. Jesus gave up his life, entrusted it to the Father to serve and to save others. And God lifted him up. God took responsibility to protect him and to preserve his life. And after he had completed the obedient, sacrificial death on the cross, the substitution for you and me, God raised him to life, victorious over sin, Satan, and death. And he placed him at the name above every name. Jesus, when he was teaching, said, if you try to save your life, if you try to save your life, you'll lose it. I think we should listen to that. He said, but if you surrender your life, if you give up your life to God, you will keep it. It's quite a push-pull scenario, but Jesus showed us what it looks like. So in this moment where we realize we don't have control over what's going on in the world, over our fate, over our future, over our health, over our well-being, God invites us to relinquish the control we don't actually even really have, to trust him for our present and for our future. And to take this intimidating, threatening pandemic and to realize this was not the thing that actually made you and me most vulnerable. This is a smaller threat to your and my well-being than was our sin-stained soul. That had rendered us spiritually dead. separated from the God who is light and life. In him there is no darkness and there is no death. So when each of us went to our own way, the consequence of that, just the net effect of that, was separation and death. What Jesus did was to take the penalty of that away from us, absorb it into himself, and to allow us to be reconciled to God, to be reborn, to begin again without fear or intimidation, without having to do everything the right way every time, living in the love and the grace and the mercy of God. And so, the invitation today is surrender the control you realize you don't have over your life and over the world. Entrust yourself, past, present, and future, to the one who made you, who loves you, who knows you, and who's with you. And walk with him, come what may, today, tomorrow, for every day on into eternity. Get in line behind the thief on the cross, who was better late than never, who realized in his dying moments that he could have life that no regret, consequence, punishment, or sentence could ever take away. All because Jesus faithfully fulfilled his. So, if that's you today, if you've never surrendered your life to God before, I want to lead you in a moment of doing that. That's what we celebrate on Easter. It's that scutbags like you and me, men and women who go around with a fair bit of pretentiousness, putting on airs, keeping our appearances up, putting our best foot forward, and we know that it doesn't even convince ourselves at times. Our own consciences betray us, convicting us of the fact that we are guilty and broken and desperate before a holy and awesome God. But thanks be to God that his love is the strongest thing about him, and that it sent him to earth to take your place and mine, to rescue, and not just to rescue, to pluck from the fire, so to speak, but to redeem, to make the most of, to bring life where people had long given up. And so if you confess with your mouth and believe that Jesus is Lord, that Jesus is the one over all, not Donald Trump, not any other nation state's leader. They're powerful in the world's government's eyes, but there's a person whose power and authority is over and above all that. And his law is love, and his gospel is peace. And he does not conquer with swords and threats and intimidations. He allowed himself to be crucified so that we could be whole. He doesn't kill his enemies, he dies for them. He doesn't force anyone into his way. He loves us until we surrender our arms, wave the right flag, and bow our knee, and come home. And so many of us watching, we love today, because today's the anniversary of the day that made possible the most important thing we've ever experienced. We're all going through the same thing in that these are scary times, but there's some of us who know that our todays are numbered by the Lord and our eternity is secure with him. And it brings a significant measure of peace. We still lose our jobs sometimes. We still get sick and die sometimes. But there's a backdrop to our life that is full of comfort and hope, and it helps us through these days. It helps us to learn how to live outside of our own experiences and our own anxiety, and to extend that same self-sacrificial service to others in their moment of need, because we no longer have to go around doing the self-preservation, self-protection thing. we can pour out ourselves for others. We don't always do it right, but that's what he's doing in us, is making us more and more into the image of his son, Jesus. And we're no different than you. And so if today you're ready to do that, I want to lead you in a prayer. You can get on your knees. You can close your eyes and bow your head. You can click the button in the chat thing that you want to say yes to Jesus. Would you pray with me? Jesus, thank you for coming into the world to take my place. Thank you for showing me the grace and mercy of God. Thank you for your truth and power, which is invincible. Would you come into my life? I receive your gift of forgiveness. Would you make me alive and new? Would you set my feet on solid ground? And would you begin a work you will promise to complete, to change me, to transform me, to take my sorry rags of a resume and to bring something beautiful and glorious from it. Not for my name's sake or impressiveness or fame, but for yours. I bow my knee before you. I honor you. Thank you for loving me and dying to save me. And I add my voice to the better late than never chorus. Thank you for meeting us in our moment of need. Amen.
Darkness we were waiting, without hope and without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming, and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who come to the Father are restored. And the church of Christ was born, then the Spirit lit the flame. Now the gospel true the Lord shall not yield, shall not faint. By his blood, in his name, in his freedom I
Thank you so much, Skylar and band. Thank you, Josh, for that great message. Here we are at the end of our time together today. But before we go scurrying on to our very next thing, let's pause and reflect on what was revealed to us today through the message and through worship. What's that one thing that stood out to you that you want to hold on to in the days ahead? I'd encourage you to tell somebody that you live with, or send a text or make a phone call to someone you trust, or write it down in a journal, so that as the days go by and we get back into the complexity of our everyday life, we can look back on the goodness and the truth that was revealed to us today.
Where do we go from here? Well, as we were reminded of today, you were made on purpose and for a purpose. Your life has significance and destiny. And we believe that intentionally walking with a community of faith, an environment of healing and growth where men and women are encouraged and equipped to become all God created them to be, that's something that we need to be consistent and intentional about. So if you fill out that connection card, maybe you haven't yet, would you let us know you were here? Introduce yourself to us. We'll follow up this week. We'll give instructions on what our gathering next week will look like. We're not going to live stream a service like this. We're going to do this new thing. We just found it.
It's called Zoom. Have
Zoom,
you
I think,
ever heard of it?
yeah,
Zoom.
The kids are all doing
It's
it.
a hot new thing.
Yeah, so we're going to Zoom next week at 10:30. The instructions will be there.
We want you to be there too.
Yes, absolutely. If you wanted to give today to invest in the mission of the gospel in the world, then there's a button there to do that. If there's a prayer request you'd love to submit, we would be honored to pray with you.
Sounds great. Why don't you give us a blessing as we go out?
Okay, your blessing as you go is found in Numbers 6. This is the way God instructed us to bless his people. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace.
Amen.
Amen. God bless you as you go. Have a blessed day.